and a bit of a breeze overnight. A cooler night to come, nevertheless, with those clear spells compared to recent nights. Temperatures down to 4 Celsius in sheltered parts of Scotland and mid to high single figures elsewhere. But plenty of sunshine on offer first thing Thursday, especially across England and Wales. I think cloud will build through the morning and a few showers will develop across Wales and the southwest. More especially, Scotland and Northern Ireland will see some showers and longer spells at times, particularly the northwest of Scotland. 13 Celsius here, 20 still possible in London, given the increased amounts of sunshine compared to Wednesday. And then clear spells for many overnight once again, but further cloud and rain will push through northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland at times. By the end of the night, confined to the northern half of Scotland. With the cloud and again a bit of a breeze, a little milder compared to Wednesday night. Temperatures by dawn on Friday looking like 10 to 12 Celsius in the south and 8 or 9 further north. A wet start for central and northern Scotland, however. Spells of rain through the day, turning more showery, and a few showers will break out a little further south as well. But actually, for much of England and Wales, it's another dry and bright day, and that bright, fine weather becomes more widespread on Saturday and Sunday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking today. Now, I can tell you what's got an awful lot of people talking. Did you see the Tory MP who basically came out and said that in his view, many Brits are only using food banks because they can't cook a meal from scratch and don't know how to budget? What do you think to this? Many people are furious, but is it offensive or true? I'll be speaking to him. And it's been suggested that it should now be the end of the road for GCSEs. What do you reckon? Do we still need them? Do we have kind of an obsession in this country with a one-size-fits-all education system? I think so. And the governments are going to try to clamp down on protesters. Yes, I say, but will it work? Because many, like for example, Extinction Rebellion, are having none of it, saying that they're going to send millions of people out onto the streets in response. Go away. And lastly, let me ask you this. If you won the lottery, would you ever go public and admit that? I'm asking because someone in this country has just won a whopping £184 million. Wasn't me. And I wouldn't even tell you if it was, but was it you? And if it was, would you tell people? All that to come and more, but first, the latest news headlines.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Miranda Shunker in the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister has signed historic security agreements in Finland and Sweden, vowing that the countries will assist each other if they are attacked. The declarations will intensify intelligence sharing, accelerate joint military training and bolster security across all three countries. Finland and Sweden are considering joining NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to respond if they join the military alliance, but Boris Johnson says the war has changed the equation of European security.
We've seen the end of the post-Cold War period, and the invasion of Ukraine, sadly, has opened a new chapter. And it would be fair to say that it has also brought Finland and the UK even closer together today. So the security declaration, the solemn declaration we've signed today, ensures that our two nations can intensify our partnership and take it to unparalleled heights.
Well, former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says Russia's aggression has made countries rethink their approach to security.
The one thing about this Ukraine crisis is it's reminded a very complacent free world that these freedoms are not free. They have to be, you have to prepare to fight for them. And what we've done is we've dealt, I think, too long. We've dealt with the world as we wish it would be, not prepared to deal with the world as it is.
Well, in Ukraine, new drone footage shows a Russian tank being destroyed in the Kharkiv region as the country pushes a counter-offensive in the north. Ukraine's Ministry of Defence claims the attack was carried out on Russia's most advanced tank. UK military intelligence says Ukraine has successfully struck Russian air defences and resupplied vessels with drones. Defence Minister Leo Doherty told MPs the UK must be prepared for the war to last a very long time. An economic think tank warns Britain is on course for a recession later this year. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research says around 250,000 households could become destitute without immediate government action. Helen Barnard from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation told GBNews the government's existing support package of £22 billion doesn't go far enough.
I think it's extraordinary that they are saying it's fine, everything's OK, we'll wait till the autumn, because for people at the very sharpest end of this, they are missing, essentials now. They're getting into debt now. Their health is getting hammered now. Their mental health is getting eroded by that constant anxiety of how on earth am I going to feed the family and keep things going.
Meanwhile, millions of renters living in unsafe conditions should have their homes improved under major housing reforms. The Levelling Up Secretary announced the new Renters Reform Bill will be extended to nearly 4.5 million households. The plans will help tenants living in damp, unsafe and cold homes and protect them from eviction notices without reason. Michael Gove also announced an overhaul of planning permission regulations, which could see neighbours voting on home developments, including extensions in their street. The Foreign Secretary says the UK will not shy away from taking action over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Liz Truss says proposals put forward by the EU would take the country backwards and cause more checks, paperwork and disruption. The DUP is refusing to form a devolved government in Northern Ireland until issues with the protocol are resolved. Sinn Féin's Vice President Michelle O'Neill says it's unacceptable for the DUP to block the nomination of a new Speaker to Stormont. Avon and Somerset Police are treating the disappearance of 15-year-old Maddie Thomas as child abduction. The teenager vanished on April the 26th after leaving her foster parents' address in Southmead, Bristol, to say she was going to the shops. Officers believe she's likely to be with a man and they're concerned about her safety. Face masks will no longer be mandatory in airports and on flights in Europe from Monday next week. That's the new recommendation from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control and the EU's Aviation Safety Agency. But airlines have been told to encourage passengers to wear face masks on flights to or from countries where it's still required on public transport. Well, on TV, online and DAB plus radio. This is GB News. Now it's back to Dewbs Co.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.23 to the dollar. The pound is 1.17 to the euro. And the price of gold currently stands at £1,504.52 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Thanks for that. Well, keep me company until 7 o'clock tonight. We've got my panel, columnist and commentator Andre Walker, anthropologist Marianne O'Hotter, and Rob Lyons, who's a Science and Technology Director at the Academy of Ideas. And you know the drill on Dewbs Co by now, don't you? It's not just about us here, it's about you at home. What is on your mind tonight? What do you think about the stories we'll be discussing? What have I missed? Anything really. What's on your mind? Get in touch with me. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GB News. Don't forget, if you're not already, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. We've got an app, we've got a podcast, we're all over social media, we're everywhere. Oh yeah, and the radio. How can I forget the radio? I have a little moonlighting I do on the side. Every time I get in a taxi, I sit there and do a little sales pitch about GB News on the radio. I'm on a one-woman marketing mission, I tell you. So if indeed you are one of those unfortunate taxi drivers that's had me in your car recently, hello to you too. Sorry for bending your ear about GB News. Anyway, wherever you are tonight, you, my friends, are welcome. Let's get into our top story tonight, shall we then? Over 2 million people in the UK use food banks, but one MP says that they're only needed because people can't cook or manage their budgets. The MP, Lee Anderson, says at his local food bank in Ashfield in Nottinghamshire, people have to register both for a cooking and a budgeting course.
I invite you personally to come to Ashfield, look at our food bank, how it works, and I think you'll see firsthand that there's not this massive use for food banks in this country. We've got generation after generation who cannot cook properly, they can't cook a meal from scratch, they cannot budget. The challenge is there. Come, I'll offer anybody. You sat there with glazed expressions on your faces, looking at me like I've landed from a different planet. Come to Ashfield, come next week, come the week after, come to a real food bank that's making a real difference to people's lives.
Well, Lee Anderson, I've not got a glazed expression on my face, and I'm excited about that invitation. I'll come. I'll head over to your food bank. Lee is apparently, hopefully, going to join us any moment soon to have a chat about his comments. He's angered quite a few people, offended many, and he's been cheered by others. So hopefully any moment now, Lee Anderson will join us for a chat about those comments. But Mary-Anne, let me start with you. What do you think of this? Has he got a point?
I think it's absolutely a positive thing to empower people to be able to cook healthy, nutritious meals for their family on a budget, to think about budgeting. But the bottom line is being able to feed your whole family for 30p is great, but people shouldn't necessarily have to do that in order to not have to turn the lights off and eat in the dark, because actually that's the only way they can make their budget add up at the end of the week. And let's be honest, there are thousands of people up and down the country now who are looking at the next few months, looking at the pay packet or the universal credit that they've got for the end of to last them to the end of the month, and they're just going, that doesn't work. And those people who are uniquely vulnerable are being driven into debt. They are being driven into ill health. They're being driven into states of mental health that mean they are less equipped to join a world of work. They are less equipped to look after their family. Being poor, being that cripplingly poor, being that close to destitution that you're having to queue up in the rain to go to a food bank is is no small thing. It has an enormous burden, and we should not, in 2022, cost of living crisis notwithstanding, here in the UK, we should be better than that. We shouldn't have people having to go, I can try and make a small piece of cheese and a couple of tins of beans and some cabbages and mushrooms get me through to the end of the week.
Andre, where do you stand on this?
Well, first of all, the Trussell Trust, which is this sort of trade organisation for food banks, counts the number of people going to food banks in quite an unusual way. So you go to a food bank for 3 days' food just a stopgap. If you go 5 times a year, you count as 5 people. So some of the statistics are slightly dodgy. But nonetheless, when I went to university, I studied this really boring unit on social policy. And what they said at the time was there's 2 types of poverty. There's primary poverty and there's secondary poverty. Really simple difference. Primary is you simply don't have enough money. Secondary is you spend things in the wrong way. You make poor choices. Look, we've been unfair to people on benefits for years and said, oh, you shouldn't be going down to the pub, you shouldn't be smoking, you shouldn't be going on holiday. At the moment, when it comes to the cost of living, particularly when it comes to these loony net zero energy policies which have pushed prices up so much, people are in primary poverty. They have an absence of money. Now, I don't have a problem with turning around and saying, look, domestic science isn't being taught in schools. I don't have a problem with saying a lot of people don't understand how to budget when they leave schools. But you know what? There's no phrase, you can't take britches off a Highlander. The reality is that if you are putting all of your money into paying for your heating and you've got no money for food, you can learn how to peel a sprout all day. It will make absolutely no difference whatsoever.
But, Rob, there is a little bit of a point here, and I'm hoping to speak to him, so we're trying to just get connected. He's confirmed that he's going to join us, so I'm excited to have this conversation directly with him. But, many would say, and I've got lots of emails coming in now, that actually managing your budget, being able to shop properly, cook properly, etc., is a skill that's lost on many.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, obviously we've got used to convenience food and we've got used to sticking the heating on, it's been affordable or whatever. But I don't think people use food banks lightly. And I think it's genuinely because they've no money. I mean, the biggest problem is delays in benefit payments, as far as I understand, or people having money taken out of benefit payments. And that's really, so it is literally just not having money to actually buy these essentials. And if you have to do that month in, month out, then your savings get used up and it just really grinds you down. So, yeah, of course, it's great that the Ashfield Food Bank is providing some advice and support as well as just 3 days' worth of food or whatever it is. But the real problem is people simply do not have enough money. And, for example, there are ways in which the governments could help these things. For example, I live in Scotland. We have minimum unit pricing, right, which means that alcohol is more expensive than it needs to be. You can't buy cheap alcohol anymore. And actually, making people's lives that little bit better by saying you can afford to have a little bit of a drink once or twice a week. Or cigarettes are ridiculously expensive. So you happen to smoke, that's a big burden for you. All these different ways in which there are sin taxes as well that could be looked at and said, this is actually making the lives of poor people much harder because it just becomes a grind.
Hang on a minute. You're saying reduce the unit price of alcohol and cigarettes so poor people can turn to them so they can get through their crap lives?
Because
that is an insane thing to say.
No, I'm saying that the grind of poverty is that you can literally survive and no more, and that little things like having a drink, having a smoke, these make your lives a little bit...
Simple pleasures that are incredibly unhealthy.
Yeah, but hang on a second. I think the principle here, look, forget the whole public health thing. The principle is that if we continually push up the price of everything, then people will have less money in the pocket. Look, the reality is, if you're going to have 4 cans of lager a week, and those 4 cans of lager cost £8 rather than £4, you'll be £4 poorer as a result. Now, I'm not arguing in favour of people drinking and smoking, though I've done plenty of both in my time. But in reality, I think we've got to get away from this idea of less but more expensive. Now, I cited the example of energy. You've cited the example of unit pricing. I think in general terms, we are pushing people into poverty. We are not a poor country.
Can I just play devil's advocate a little bit? because I'm looking at my inbox is flying through, and I'm going to paraphrase some of the sentiments that I'm getting, because I'm getting a lot of people saying similar things, so I'm just going to summarise it. There's a suggestion coming through, Marianne, on my inbox that some people are basically chancers. Let's just say you have a disposable income of, let's just say, I don't know, I'll pick a figure, £10. If out of that £10 you've got to get your food, your heating, your this, your that, your the other, and then someone comes along to you and says, right, now you don't need to pay for your food because you can go over there to the local church and you can get your food for free, so you can keep your £10 to spend on whatever else. There's a suggestion that I'm reading that it's almost people taking advantage of food banks because they can. What would you say to that?
It's a comfortable psychological position to find yourself in, to say, well, they don't really need it. They're choosing to do that because they're lazy and good for nothing. But let's be honest, go down to a food bank and talk to someone standing in that queue in the rain and ask them, and they will tell you that they feel ashamed to be there.
Michelle,
But hang on, is it all or nothing? Because what you're saying is that every single person is in this situation. Some of my viewers are suggesting that it might be the opposite. Isn't there a mixture of the two?
It's much more comfortable to say, well, they're doing it sort of because they're choosing to. That they could go to the shop and buy some healthy basics and feed their family, but they choose not to. What they're going to do instead, and it's a Victorian notion of the deserving poor and the undeserving poor, and we're going to kind of scatter through. We're going to siphon out the sheep and the goats, and these people, they're genuinely people worthy of our sympathies. And these people, they're chancers. They're no good. They're spending their money on betting and fags and booze. They're the ones with the dirty, snotty kids. They're the ones who don't bother. And it's just not true. Marcus Rashford, you know, the guy that we all like, lots of people like him, you know, we can regard him as a kind of an upstanding citizen of our country. His mother went to a food bank and she didn't want to.
I'm not sure that's got to do with the price of it, because nobody. But no one
saying that
disputes.
she's a chancer.
But hang on, because I just want to respond to your point, because I think you're taking it to a silly extreme. What you're saying, Marianne, is that basically when there's a sentiment coming that people are making a suggestion here that there will be some people that actually they're choosing to use that food bank in order to have spare money to spend elsewhere, and then what you're saying is, you know, that's really kind of basically offensive, and that everyone that uses the food banks is, you know, on the burns of the backside and desperately needing this thing. And I think perhaps there's somewhere in the middle, absolutely people desperately need help with their food. And I think that's an appalling situation. I think it's an embarrassment as a nation that we are a wealthy nation and we actually have people that genuinely cannot afford to feed their own children. I think that's shameful for us as a nation. Yeah. But I don't think that means that therefore the opposite cannot also be true, that there are some people out there that are seizing opportunities for themselves to make life easier for themselves with the money that they do have. Hold on one sec, because I want Andre to come in as well.
I think I made the point earlier about the way that the statistics are put together. If you read what the Trussell Trust say and what the food banks say, it makes it sound like 2 million people are permanently on a food bank. Every single week after week, they go and get their food from a food bank, which is why your viewers are turning around and saying, hang on a second, that sounds completely nuts. The reality is, you normally only go there for 3 days. And as I say, if you go 5 times a year, you'll count as 5 people. If you go 10 times a year, you count as 10 people. The reality is, what has actually happened here, and it is as a result largely of benefits being slow. People will go for 3 days food and then they'll move on and not go back. But because of the way the Trussell Trust continually quotes this statistic of 2 million people being on food banks, it makes it sound like there are 2 million people permanently doing this day in, day out, which is just nonsense.
I think the bigger picture is that benefits aren't rising with the cost of living, that people are being driven into debt, that there are deductions policies that are enacted by the government that mean that when you finally do get your universal credit come through, for example, or your working benefits because you're a part of a working household, you get deductions made. Up to 25% of what you've been given gets taken away again to pay back the advance. You don't get any notice on that.
But I want to
and the people at the very bottom don't have that contingency.
There was a benefit cap. There was a benefit cap of £22,000. Now, remember, in order to earn £22,000, you have to have a job that pays £30,000. How many people watching this show are earning £30,000? You start to think to yourself, look, you know, if people in a job are going to have to take some slack, why can't people on benefits take some slack as well?
There are people with jobs who are queuing up at food banks.
£22,000 after tax is a decent sum of money.
Right, well, hang on. Cool your jets, you two, because I've found him. Oh, apparently, I think I've found him. Have we got him yet or not? We're just testing his link, apparently. Right, so I shall come to you just whilst we're waiting for Lee, because obviously what we can see is that, you know, the suggestions and comments made today have obviously divided opinion. So final word to you, Rob, just whilst we're doing the old link testing.
Well, just on the specific thing that you just said about people using food banks and then spending money elsewhere. Well, good luck to them. These are voluntary organisations, and if people who are skinned, and they can get some of the things that they need voluntarily from a charitable organisation, so they can spend a bit of money on something else. I don't care. But doesn't deal with the broader picture of poverty. It's probably not as bad as Andrew says. The statistics probably overstate it in some ways. Nonetheless, there's millions and millions of people who are now struggling to pay the bills, and we need to look at the broader picture of why living has become so expensive in this country and why wages and benefits have not kept up with that.
Well, I can tell you there's a real split coming through from the viewer contacts as we speak about this whole kind of situation. Some people are saying, and I'm doing a direct quote, Patricia says, I agree with the MP, 3 cheers. She's saying it's about time people use their heads a bit more. We're throwing away food relentlessly. Patricia, though, what would you say? It's all well and good throwing away food, but that would indicate that you can afford the food to buy and then throw away in the first place. Many people, though, saying, Pippa says, hang on, Michelle, because some people are not even accepting things such as potatoes because they can't afford to cook them. So what she's saying is it's not about people not knowing how to cook, but perhaps it's about they can't simply afford to cook. But again, I have to say, really divided. I would say it's almost half divided in the middle about what people are thinking about this topic. But, ladies and gentlemen, I have him, the MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson. Lee, good evening to you and thanks for joining us.
Good evening.
Well, I have to say, we've just been having a little bit of a debate here and now, Lee, about what you were suggesting. As I understand it, what you were saying today is essentially, and I quote, it's all about people basically using food. Like a food bank, that's the word. I lost my train of thought there. You're using food banks apparently because they don't know how to cook from scratch and how to budget. Yes, am I right? Is that your sentiment?
It's very convenient how some of the mainstream media have clipped that speech today. I've put the full speech out on my Facebook post, so anybody can check that. But the point I'm making is a serious point. I work very closely with the local food bank in Ashfield, and we've recognised together that there are a lot of people out there who don't have the experience in cooking, and they struggle to budget, and more importantly, they struggle. They've got very little shopping skills. So when they go to a supermarket for a shop, they don't have the skills that my mum and my grandma had back in the day, where they could buy fresh vegetables, and cheaper bits of meat and cook from scratch. And make nutritious meals for their family. So my food bank have recognised this, and what we do now at the food bank is when people come in for a food parcel, they are signed up for a cooking course and a budgeting course, and they get that food parcel on the condition they sign up for that. And that's what they're doing. They're helping people who have a real need for food. But what they're learning is that people, once they learn how to cook, and once they learn how to cook from scratch and buy on a budget, they can actually do it. And the good news is, once they can do it, they've got a few more quid in their pocket at the end of the week. Surely that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, it's hard to agree that anyone, would disagree with the sentiment that if someone is able to cook, etc., then that would be a good thing. I think we're all in agreement with that. But You know, we talk here about the sentiment of cooking meals from scratch. And by the way, if the invitation is open, I would be delighted to come to your food bank and have a look at what's going on. But what would you say? Do you concede that there are some people that even if you show them how to cook from scratch, even if you show them how to budget, they simply do not have the funds to be able to heat their food and eat decent food, nutritious food? Do you concede that there are people that have done their best and they still don't have the money?
Well, this is why we do batch cooking at the food bank. We teach people how to batch cook for a whole week. Now, we did a small project and we filmed it. I can send you the details, where we took some school children to the local supermarket and we spent 50 quid. I gave them 50 quid out of my pocket. We filled a trolley up of vegetables with a local chef, an award-winning top chef. We filled that trolley up, 50 quid. We went back to the college. I invited 4 other MPs, and we had a bake-off, like a cook-off. And we prepared then, I think it was about 170 meals, and we put them into containers and froze them. Now, that's enough to feed a family of 5 for about 50 quid. Now, they're not massive piles of what you get at the local carvery, but they were enough. They were nutritious, good value meals. Now, I think when people say to me that junk food is cheaper, that's nonsense. You can buy fresh vegetables still and shop around for your cuts of meat, and you can make some good meals, some good tasty, nutritious meals on a budget. And I think if we can get some people to do that, not everybody's going to be able to do it, but if we can get some people on that who then learn those skills and can pass them skills on to their children, then surely that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I do think it's a good thing. I do think it's wonderful for people, as I've just said, to be able to shop and cook and all. I think it's fantastic. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is, we mentioned there 50 quid batch cooking, wonderful. But do you concede that there are people that have done all your tips, they've done your courses, they simply cannot afford to go to the store and buy the basic ingredients? You talk about 30p or whatever. If people don't have their 30 pences, do you think your government is doing enough to help them?
Well, government's already provided, just another extra £22 billion in extra support. There's direct support available from local authorities. We just spent over £400 billion, wrapping our arms around the economy during COVID. The government has spent a hell of a lot of money supporting people. But, my position is, yes, we have to support. There are a group of people we have to support. But in the meantime, instead of just throwing money at everything, let's try and help people. Let's try and, give them that education, give them those life skills that they've missed out on. And if we can do that and help them cook, help them budget, like I said, they can pass that on to the children, then that puts this country in a better place.
Lee, I'm going to try again, because you have me on board with what you're saying about educating and budget and skills. That's wonderful. But you're still not kind of answering my question. In the here and now, if somebody's sitting here watching this, and there'll be people in your own constituency and up and down the country, they'll be panicking. They are, anxious. They do not have the money. They're not eating themselves. They'll be doing their best to feed their kids, but them themselves as adults won't be able to eat. And it's all well and good. We're talking about COVID support and this, that and the other. And I saw the Queen's speech yesterday, and we're talking about growing an economy for the future. That's all brilliant. But in the here and the now, honestly, with a straight face, Lee, can you honestly say that you think you're doing enough to help those people that truly, truly are struggling?
Well, I think governments can always do more. I've got to be in my bonnet about the cost of fuel, domestic fuel. I want to see an end to the green levy and VAT on fuel. And I'll tell you what, there's not many supporters in both sides of the House on that one. Even the opposition are against me on the green levy. I want to see us frack. I want to see us increase gas and oil production. I want to see all these measures. I want us to be self-sufficient on domestic fuel. I would love for our country to be that, to bring the fuel prices down, because let's not forget, it is the cost of fuel that drives a lot of these prices up and up. But if people are genuinely struggling, then I would say go and see your CAB, which I used to work for, by the way. I used to see people in poverty on a daily basis. I'm not in a bubble down here. I've helped those people budget. I've helped those people who've had debt problems. Go and see your local MP. And if you're really struggling, I'll tell you what, the invitation's open to come to Ashfield. If we can help you, we will. But if you need that extra support, then it's our job as government to try and provide that extra support.
Well, Lee Anderson, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Thanks for that. And I am going to take up your invitation. You say that we can come and join you. I'm going to come and join you. And I look forward to learning and being able to share with the masses how they too can cook from scratch and budget and all the rest of it. But for now, thank you for your time. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about a lot of things actually. GCSEs, do you think that we should be having them or not? I want to talk about protesting. What do you think we should do with these, what I would call moronic protesters who feel a need to attach themselves to infrastructure and disrupt us all? And also, would you go public if you won the National Lottery? I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Coming up on The Mark Stein Show, the victims of the ongoing back scandal keep coming. Tonight, 2 more people open up about their ordeal after they were left injured by the vaccine. Peter Schiff joins us to discuss the declining US dollar and euro. And one woman's inspiring journey from escaping Al-Qaeda to fighting against draconian rules that force women to wear burqas. All that and more on The Mark Stein Show from 8 o'clock.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. My panel tonight, I've just had to try and shush them up. Gabbering away they are in the break there. Columnist and commentator Andrea Walker, anthropologist Mariana Hotter, and Rob Lyons, the Science and Technology Director at the Academy of Ideas. Now, did you do your GCSEs at school? You might remember Tony Blair, who as Prime Minister said that his government's priorities were, are you shouting it out at home? If you're not, you should know it. Education, education, and education. Well, now his son Ewan is saying that GCSEs offer no guarantee of who will succeed or fail in life. Why is, you might be saying, well, why do I care what Tony Blair's son thinks? Well, to be fair to him, he does know a thing or two because he runs a company that basically promotes professional apprentices and is seemingly doing very well in doing so. Rob, when it comes to the whole GCSE things, do we need them, don't we need them? I'm always curious about this because I personally think in this society we have almost a one-size-fits-all educational system, and then you have often lazy employers that will kind of just use your grades as a filtering kind of method. Yeah. And I'm not sure about them. I personally would support a big overhaul of kind of ripping these things up and starting to think differently about how we educate and assess young people.
Well, I think GCSEs are really, really important. I think exams in general are really important because they give the students, the pupils, a real focus You know, I mean, I'm a journalist and I work on deadlines, and I think kids do as well, and that's their focus for it. And when they didn't have the exams for the past couple of years, I think a lot of them felt quite lost about that. But that doesn't. But all the things you're saying about the laziness of employers and the sort of like narrow-minded thinking, I think there's a lot of truth in that as well. For example, when B&Q suddenly started employing older people, you know, they opened their minds to the idea that older people could actually be much better. And just because somebody's academic doesn't mean they can't be a good worker. So I think you and Blair's got half a point, but I don't think the answer is to scrap exams. I think it's to have better opportunities for people who, for them, it's not really what they want to do, to get skills and get good jobs. And certainly this idea, which is very common these days, where you get a half-decent job and they'll throw out half the CVs for anybody who doesn't have a degree. Well, that's just mad. I mean, like, especially when, in situations where often the people they're replacing, the people who are retiring, didn't have a degree either. So that kind of degree obsession or GCSE obsession, we need to get rid of that and be much more open-minded about what makes a good employee and who and give people the tools to get on in life, whether it's an exam or whether it's an apprenticeship or something else.
Andre, do you agree with that?
Well, I think it's funny, actually. My dad was an electrical engineer for many years and rose to the top of a major company, the Co-op Electrical Engineering Division. And the problem that they had under the secondary modern system was that kids were leaving school with no qualifications, effectively. It was really hard to work out who was, with all due respect, completely unemployable, and somebody who, whilst they weren't academic, was somebody who'd be a good apprentice electrical engineer. And so actually having the GCSEs in place was incredibly helpful for that. I think the point you're making is this, that our issue is, first of all, the one-size-fits-all. I think there's been a huge grade inflation. Some courses now, a quarter of all the grades are A's, which I think is a major problem. But there's just a lack of diversity within the whole thing. When I talk about diversity, what I mean is, in schools, you're not using online learning to study Japanese if you want to. You can't. There's not a range of subjects there. It's just the same subjects. Everybody's doing the same thing. And I think that's the one-size-that-fits-all element. But I do maintain that having that idea of the 5 grade A to C, where you know that somebody's got their maths, got their English, and got a few other bits and bobs, I think that is so important, because it's just really hard for employers to know whether somebody's bluntly an E candidate or a C candidate. And under the old O-levels, there was no way to differentiate those two groups of people.
Marianne?
Exams, apprenticeships, whatever. There's some kind of method of teaching someone something and then testing and assessing whether they understand it and whether they can use it.
Or whether they can regurgitate it. They don't necessarily need to understand it. You just need to be able to regurgitate what someone's just told you.
Yeah, possibly. But maybe if you're an electrical engineer apprentice, it's a practical test. But whatever the tool is, it's not just the fact that there is a tool. It's how you use it and whether it's fit for purpose, isn't it? So I think saying, well, we should scrap GCSEs is potentially an argument, but you go, well, what will you have instead? You need some other kind of assessment method.
Why?
In order to kind of work out whether someone understands how to wire a house or not, and therefore whether they should get qualified as an electrician, or whether they can design something and become an electrical engineer or whatever it is.
But testing whether or not someone at school can, regurgitate pi or certain angles or triangles or whatever it is, whatever nonsense it is that people get taught these days at school, that bear no reality into the real world, by the way, that's very different to someone learning how to, this wire is this and this wire is this for a technical qualification for a job. They're two completely different things.
I think, don't throw away triangles. They're probably quite important for most science, engineering and maths. But I think there was recently a Times and YouGov survey asking parents, do they think that England's education system prepares their children for either life or for the world of work? 60% of parents said no, it doesn't prepare children for either life or for work. And I think it's an absolute crime that we have young people leaving 11 or more years of compulsory schooling not able to read and write not to the level of reading Dostoevsky in Russian or enjoying Jane Austen for pleasure, but literally being able to read
we'll
the
agree on
document
that.
and know what to do with it, know what it says. We've got people who don't understand basic maths. We have people who don't understand how to manage their finances, to understand how to assess whether a media or kind of piece of news content is trustworthy or not. That's the stuff that we need our young people to know. And then whether they want to go and learn triangles so they can become scientists, engineers, technicians, whether we want them to be able to think creatively and become entrepreneurs and establish their own businesses, we still need them to be able to have basic numeracy and literacy. And fundamentally, whoever you are, whether you're doing an apprenticeship, whether you're doing a further degree, all our young people should be coming out proud of themselves, feeling secure in the world, and feeling like they haven't just been totally bypassed by the education system.
I actually wonder whether this is the fundamental issue. Because, look, the idea of getting teenagers up to a basic skill level, I don't have a particular problem with. In fact, I think it's a good thing. My issue is, when John Major turned the polytechnics into universities, the idea was that practical qualifications would be on the same level as academia, which I think is manifestly a great idea. The problem is all of these universities have attempted to become academic, and what you've ended up with is just thousands upon thousands of people studying courses that can't possibly ever be useful to them. The great statistic that somebody told me from one of your rivals, TV companies, they said that apparently there are twice as many people qualify for media studies every year as there are media studies jobs in totality. So that means if you sacked everybody in that profession, you'd still have twice as many people per year. Now, look, I'm not having a go at it, but look, there are some courses actually which are much maligned, but are better. As an example, people take the mick out of golf. But the golf management courses actually have a really high employment rate because you're literally training somebody how to run a golf club. That's the sort of thing that you need to bring in.
Andre, I think it's a backward step to say that you should only study something that leads directly to the same job. So study golf management, go and manage a golf course. Because the whole point of education is it teaches us how to think, how to be analytical, how to be creative and translate that.
I bet, Mary-Anne, there's a lot of people that are screaming at the TV saying the point of education it doesn't teach us how to think these days. It tells you what to think. It tells you this is this, and woe betide anyone that tries to think differently to that.
Andrew Breitbart once said it was lucky that he never bothered listening in lectures, otherwise he would have turned into a socialist.
Well, I'm going to go I need to go to a quick break. We're going to leave these two to argue about socialism. Samuel, by the way, on Twitter has been in touch saying Lee Anderson was fantastic. Michelle, if anything, was offensive. Ooh. It was her questioning of him. He handled himself incredibly well. Samuel, I wasn't offensive. He's saying basically that I should have appreciated more what Lee Anderson was trying to do. I repeated multiple times that actually I think it's great to try and make sure that people understand how to budget, how to shop and how to cook from scratch. I advocate this regularly. All I'm trying to get at there is that where there are people that simply do not have the money to buy the ingredients that you're teaching them they need to cook, what happens then? That was my question. If that's offensive, well, what can I do? Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, was it you that won £184 million last night? If it was, are you single? Anyway, I want to talk to you about that. And also, I want to talk to you about protests. Are you someone that gets into the protests? Or are you someone that thinks that protesters should pack it in, trying to disrupt our lives? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, should the Queen get to keep the perks of being a royal when she cannot fulfil her duties? Daily Mirror associate editor Kevin Maguire, who made that controversial suggestion, will battle with me in the clash. One of the latest big victims of cancel culture, footballer Matt Le Tissier, joins me after being deplatformed by the sport that he loves over his vaccine views. Plus, it's a night of unfiltered opinion with US superstar journalist Megyn Kelly and columnist extraordinaire Rod Liddell. Plus, I'll be joined by my superstar panel too, columnist Amanda Patel, entrepreneur and activist Adam Brooks, and broadcaster Ashley James. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Lots of people writing in about triangles. I wish that I didn't bother now. I wish that I don't know where I came out with triangles. Of all the things that you learn from school, I don't know why I chose to randomly choose the innocent triangle as an example of something to be infuriated about. But lots of you are pointing out how essential triangles are to life. Okay then, well, I stand corrected. All I'm saying is, we do get taught a load of nonsense, don't we, at school within these GCSEs, and you get all these kids that come out with their A stars or whatever the equivalent is. But don't be too offended when I say this, but a lot of them are just gawless. So yes, they can regurgitate all this stuff, but they've got nothing about them.
There are two bad types of triangle: Bermuda and love. So there we go.
Oh, God. As I say, I'm going to regret ever mentioning the humble triangle. Right, let's talk protesters gluing themselves to things, shall we? They've probably been gluing themselves to triangles at some point, I imagine. Anyway, the government announced yesterday in the Queen's speech a new public order bill. It's basically going to make locking on, where you, like, glue yourself and all the rest of it, it's going to be an offence if you do this to public infrastructure. What do we think to this, Marianne? Long overdue or a bit ridiculous?
Well, I'm never going to be a fan of getting stuck in a traffic jam behind someone who's glued themselves to a road. However, I think the reason people are so angry and are being driven to such extremes of behaviour is because the kind of perhaps more reasonable channels of communication with our government appear to fall on deaf ears. We are in a biodiversity and climate crisis. The government do nothing. They haven't insulated homes. Insulate Britain, I mean, to give them credit, their call, what it is that they want us to do, is in the title of their organisation. Extinction Rebellion, you kind of go, well, that's just two words. Insulate Britain, it's a very simple call to action, and we don't do it. If we insulated our homes, some of the people who are trying to make their budget stretch would have less far to stretch, because the £10 notes wouldn't be going out of the window or out of the chimney. If we insulated our homes, we would have less reliance on Russian oil and gas, because we would need to use less of it to heat our homes.
And that's all well and good, but do you support their behaviour of basically stopping critical infrastructure? So when people are doing all these stupid things, like stopping the oil being allowed to be circulated, distributed and all the rest of it, do you support that by way of getting their message across?
I think public protest is important and it should be protected in law. I think the public order bill that's being proposed by the government now is actually, Caroline Lucas, the leader of the Green Party, has described it as a public oppression bill, and I think it's absolutely right. The reason these aspects got thrown out by the House of Lords is not because the Lords collectively think gluing yourself to a train is a good idea. It's because they identified these different draft bits of legislation as really badly thought through, really badly written, and would have unintended consequences for democracy. And none of that has changed. The government is just too lazy, too disenfranchised, too disdainful of the people to have bothered to make them better. They've just put them back in and gone, well, maybe everyone will be distracted and we'll wave some Ukrainian flags and go on about refugees, and then maybe they won't notice that actually genuine the right of protest, which is a right of protest, it's not a luxury, it's not something to be gifted to you by the government. It is a fundamental underpinning of our democracy.
And you're nodding along,
needs to be protected.
Rob?
Well, I'm very nervous about any government that's imposing restrictions on protest, especially when they're broadly worded and badly worded pieces of legislation that end up getting used for the wrong purposes. I mean, I think the biggest problem is that we have laws about a lot of this stuff, and the police are standing there not enforcing them. Very often it's the direct action of of people who are affected by these things that means that we saw in Canning Town when people were getting dragged off the top of the tubes because people were so frustrated about not getting to work. And you can see also the reaction of that woman who gently touched a protester with her car getting hauled over the coals, whereas people disrupting whole chunks of cities.
Hauled over the coals. She got fined. She lost her licence for about a year, if I remember rightly, and got a small fine. But it's not really about the money; it was about the principle. While simultaneously, from what I remember of those protests, the police were standing there, going up to the protesters. Yeah. Oh, are you okay? Is there anything I can get you? Are you all right? Sorry,
I don't think you should gently touch someone with a car. I don't think.
Well, I don't think you should sit down in front of someone's car and stop people going about their business because you've decided that your agenda of the day is more important than pretty much every single other person going about their business. Am I wrong, Andre?
Well, look, the reality is these are not protests. What these people have done, it started with Brian Hoare in Parliament Square. What you do is get your mates who've all got a trust fund and don't have to get a job, sit there on Parliament Square for 18 months and not wash. That's not a protest. Effectively, what these people are doing increasingly is A, moving in to places permanently, B, deliberately trying to disrupt things, and C, effectively just cause the maximum amount of trouble by harassing people. So let me give you an example. These vegan protesters are not protesting in favour of veganism. Often they're standing in front of butcher shops with a megaphone telling people not to come in. That's not a protest. That's simply harassing people. And as far as I'm concerned, I think these are a bunch of middle-class do-gooders who think they know better than everybody else. I think the Stink Bomb Rebellion should apologise to the public, not least because of their poor personal hygiene. And I think there's no problem whatsoever with saying you have a right to protest, you have a right to march down the street, get your placard out. But if you want to move in for 6 months and shout abuse at school children going into Parliament, sling your hook.
Well, there you go. I was just about to say get off the fence, but I don't think you're on it. Right, I've literally got a minute left on the show, so I'm going to end with just a very quick question. Was there any of you three that won the £184 million last night?
No, actually, I won a tenner about 6 months ago.
Did you? Would you ever tell anyone if you won the lottery? Obviously not 184 million, because people are going to know anyway at some point, but if you won, I don't know, just say like 2 million, would you tell anyone, Mary-Anne?
A mere 2 million?
Yeah,
no,
anything,
I don't
really.
think I would.
Would you tell people if you won the lottery?
I'd tell family and friends as I film. I can't see any benefit to being public about it, apart from for the people who run the lottery.
I had a friend who won the lottery.
Is this the Welsh shortest story? Because we're almost out of time.
A friend who won the lottery, everybody sued him and nobody would buy anything from his company because they thought he was rich anyway.
Oh, well, there you go. Would you tell people if you won the lottery? I certainly would not. You're asking for trouble, aren't you? Anyway, as I said, I am still regretting mentioning triangles. You're never going to live it down. And I'm getting some quite rude comments, actually, about me and triangles. I'll leave that to your imagination. Anyway, I think that is pretty much all we've got time for. I managed to avoid the Wagger for Christie again tonight? Yes. Am I right to avoid that? Or are you desperate to hear about it? Tell me. Anyway, that is all we've got time for now. Thank you very much to my panel, Andre Walker, Rob Lyons and Mariana Hotta. If you missed any of the show tonight, you can watch it or you can get it on the podcast, get it on YouTube, wherever. Have yourself a good evening and I'll see you tomorrow. Up next is Nigel Farage. Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening and thank you very much indeed. Tonight, is working from home a right? The government have stepped back from legislating on the issue. The trade unions don't appear to be happy. Dave Penman from the FDA will be here joining me. We'll discuss and debate that. I don't think we're going to agree. Is there a trade war looming with Europe if we get tough on Northern Ireland and remove that border in the Irish Sea? Marcus Fish MP joins me. I'll ask him, should we be worried? And joining me on Talking Pint, Stephen Roberts, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police. That could be a long conversation. But first, let's have a look at the weather.
Hello and welcome to the latest from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGivern. Drier and clearer for many over the next 24 hours following Wednesday's wet weather. But there will be further showers in the north, and those showers will continue over the next few days across northern parts of the UK because we'll be close to high pressure here. But the more persistent rain that we've seen through England and Wales through the day, well, that clears overnight, and hence clear skies fairly widely across England, Wales, eastern and southern parts of Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. But towards the north and the west of Scotland, we'll keep some showers going, one or two into the north coast of Northern Ireland, Cumbria, for example, as well. Away from the showers, temperatures dropping to 6 to 8 Celsius, by and large, a cooler, fresher start to Thursday compared to Wednesday, but a brighter start certainly across much of England and Wales. Much sunnier conditions compared to Wednesday morning, and a dry day to come for most. But one or two showers will develop across Wales and the southwest, northern England as well. Most of the showers, however, will continue to affect northern and western Scotland and Northern Ireland. 13 to 14 Celsius here, 17 to 20 for parts of England and Wales, with the sunny spells feeling pleasantly warm. But there will be a bit of a breeze, especially in the north, and that will carry further rain or showers into Scotland, northern England, as well as Northern Ireland during the evening on Thursday. Increasingly, those showers becoming confined, however, by the start of Friday, north of the central belt. Mild start to Friday. In places, it will be 10 to 12 degrees. A bright start in the south. The further north you are, the cloudier it will be, the breezier it will be. But I think, actually, for much of England and Wales, it's a dry day. And for much of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, it's also fine, but cloudy and breezy. The rain largely affecting northern and western Scotland. And even here, it dries up and brightens up on Saturday and into Sunday. Plenty of warm sunshine developing.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The